I was a philosophy major in college, and then I became a history graduate student. But I continued to teach philosophy and think about it for to this day. I taught the Great Books course at Columbia, so Plato, Aristotle, Aquinas, all the way through. That I wasn't totally aware of this. I started hearing about this split in the philosophical profession between analytic philosophers and what is called continental philosophers, which is what I've always done,
Hmm.
which to me, I never quite understood it. And I got to tell you, I've always been hostile to analytic. Um, but I don't really know it. I just know that like when I had friends in the philosophy department at Columbia, and when they would describe their projects to me, they sounded trivial, basically. Like one of my friends, his dissertation was a 300-page analysis of, I believe, one chapter in a Wittgenstein book, something
Hmm.
like that. Just quite obscure and sort of apolitical. I mean, not everything is political, everything has political consequences, everything has political meaning, but to them, like it seemed to me that they almost didn't want to have political questions that they were answering. But anyway, what I want you to do is a lot of the audience won't know this. And even I, as I'm telling you, am struggling with what is the difference and why is one better than the other?
Yeah, I mean, if you look inside of like a English in the English speaking world, you might think that there's really four kind of philosophical traditions. So neo-Thomist Catholic philosophy, or people who sort of specialize on you basically see them only at Catholic schools, but they're people who are doing sort of like Catholic social thought, Catholic philosophy. They really think St. Thomas Aquinas is the greatest thing ever, and are doing variations on like his work. Then there's what you might call American philosophy, which is really just like Peirce and Dewey and a bunch of pragmatists from the 19th century and people who kind of specialize in that. And there aren't that many of those people, but you see them in places like Vanderbilt and a few other schools. Continental philosophy, you could really divide into two groups. There's a group that belongs to something called the SPEP, the Society for Phenomenology, and I forget what the other E and P are because I haven't thought about any of those people in 20 years. Uh, and they're very interested in like certain like post idealist German and French philosophers, existentialism, Heidegger, Gadamer, and so on. And when I look at their work, I don't really know what they're doing. It doesn't read like philosophy to me. It just seems
Hmm.
like kind of weird poetry. There's
Hmm.
also people who study
Hmm.
continental philosophy at places like Columbia or Georgetown or University of Chicago and so on, or
Yeah.
Brown, places I've
Right.
worked.
Right.
But they write. They're just interested in some of those figures, but they write the way that I write. So someone like Brian Leiter, who runs like this, he used to run like this very prominent ranking of like the philosophy departments. He studies continental figures. He's really into Marx. He's really into Freud and so on. But his writing is basically indistinguishable from mine. He would be like the same kind of training that I have, even though he's interested in different people. The dominant branch doesn't mean it's the best branch, but the biggest branch is what's called analytic philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, what it meant to be analytic philosophy was you stopped really caring about a lot of moral questions or metaphysical questions, and you focused on the analysis of language and thinking that a lot of philosophical problems are actually just linguistic problems. No one in analytic philosophy, who so-called analytic philosophers, actually thinks that anymore. They
Hmm.
haven't for like 70 years.
Okay.
But if what the emphasis is on so-called analytic philosophy is having very rigorous argumentation, clear. I mean, a lot of writers are awful, but even despite that, there's an emphasis on having clear writing, making
Hmm.
exactly clear what you're arguing about. Analytic philosophers, of course, see themselves as we are actually the we're the intellectual descendants of the other philosophers. We're doing the same project they were, and of course the Continentals are just writing bad poetry. Continental philosophers often say the same thing about analytic philosophers.
Hmm.
Honestly, I don't think the distinction really matters that much anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was a bigger deal 30 or 40 years ago. So yeah, there are people who work in that SPEP organization and they don't go to the so-called APA, the American Philosophical Association meeting, very much. But I think at this point it's mostly just there's just philosophy and people are writing about different things. I mean, it is true that like in my graduate program, you were not going to be assigned Heidegger, and you weren't going to be assigned
Hmm.
Gadamer, but
Hmm.
or like if you said you're a postmodernist, people would like be like, laugh at you. You might as well say that you grow crystals in your backyard. But beyond that, it's just philosophy,
Guess what?